Hello and welcome to another podcast to NoWhere. This is my third official episode, I guess, and this will be a brainstorming session, sort of continuation of episode 2 about mathematics, numbers being alive, what it is to term something living mathematics. And also a bit about, basic arithmetic, basic way that organic growth happens. I'm, really searching for better verbiage here. But as this is sort of new to me, it's not something that I have well rehearsed, of course. So thank you so much for giving me your ear to hear and listening. And as always, I would really love to hear any feedback or comments, ideas, reactions to anything that I bring forth, but especially this subject here, because my hope is to make math simple, to talk about simple truth in a simple way. And how that can reflect back to us in our lives, how to live simply and how to simply be happy, to be simply good. And that while our life is complex, and yes, it is the function and purpose to create distortion, manyness, explore new things, there's also a wonderful parameter or set of rules, sort of instruction base given to us or really shown to us instead of the best way. Words can be convoluted, they can be misinterpreted, they're in fact probably the worst way of exchange. And yet sometimes words are wonderful and they are the most convenient, quickest avenue of explanation and sharing between others in this, external world that we are a part of. And so with hopes of sort of getting better words to help define these ideas, that's what I'm doing here today. So thanks for listening. If you're a continued listener, thank you so much for coming back and listening to my rambles. I appreciate that even more. Your audience is worth more than gold to me. Just to kind of pick up where I was at before without too much explanation or to run myself dry on the same topics that I've already sort of exhausted. Not really exhausted because you can't overdo this stuff, but to bring it into a different area but continued in the same way. The organic flow and set of growth points and interactions, they are their own given parameters, and sometimes it's looked at as Mother Earth, and I think that is such a beautiful archetype and theme to sort of allow a lighting or a flavoring, right? It's a coloration to filter over or to lighten up, cast a glow of upon us all and upon this world and on what holds us here. And to have feminine energies in this place setting is so helpful. Sometimes I think we get really caught up in this, male against female, or what is a god, and if it is neither or both or anything in between. And I think the creation here is a multiplicity of happenings, and that being able to look at things from a spectrum is super helpful. And so I'm going to be sort of talking a bit metaphorically, a bit in an analogies, but also, symbology, but also speaking in a literal sense as well. I believe, and I've talked about this in the previous videos, but I'll just say for newcomers or just to reiterate, that there's this sort of trifold happening, mind, body, and spirit layer that is not just of human kind, but that is a base truth makeup of foundational fundamental growth. And all of organic life has mind, body, spirit layer of happening consciousness that it embodies and explores manyness and growth through. And so this sort of three-part allowance for interpretation and dissection I find is very, very helpful. And so, and also it's sort of a templistic general tool that we, as creator consciousness, when we are talking about something, we set the boundary of what we're talking about. And so once we've set the boundary of whatever the thing is, then we can see how it's a threefold system happening. And so, much like our world, all parts of our world, once we dive into them, can be their own sort of systems. But the world in itself is also the sort of three-part system. And when we think about how we've gotten to three happenings, right, we have to have first one and then two. And one initially is masculine. It's, single line, forward action. The two turns into the second, right? The opposite, what it is not. And of course, if we have male being first, we have our opposite as female. Now, there's some different viewpoints on which came first, the chicken or the egg, and whether it's, whatever. But I really find it beautiful and harmonious to the undertones of what each divine represents, to see the more stable potentialities that would come into fruition and be built upon to have man, singular man, masculine first. Of course, it doesn't mean that it has more worth. This is, sort of a misconstrued principle, and it's not correct. And it's not about, when I talk about living math and bring things into life and talk about not just quantitative but qualitative values of numbers, and how mathematics, arithmetic, and common sense basic maths are really reflections of happenings that happen in real life, and that they need to, or they hold place for many variables. And so they need to reflect not just a signifier of a quantity of how many of something, but also to have a qualitative concept of what they represent in the stage, in the whole, in the real. Why do we do counting? Why do we have more than one of anything, right? And so to say that I find, and I'm a woman, and I'm not a feminist by any means, but there are plenty of them, and there's plenty of even, men out there, and plenty of scientists and academia, intellects, and all these people who would be sort of offended by the fact that a woman would come second. And again, this, the Bible even says this, but it turned into a very manipulated version of it. And I myself have been fed a very manipulated version of it. And it's not until later now in my life that I can be able to look at it more clearly, with honesty, being a wife and a mother now, to understand the valued place setting that is the second, that is the two, that is the female, the receiver. And there's a couple of different depictions of how numbers are made and counted, and it's very interesting, even counting on your fingers, to have one finger in the point, our initial pointer finger as one is usually pretty, or even if you do it with the thumb, and we count with the thumb and the forepoint. We have one single, and then we have two created. With two created comes that vertice, that angular point, right? The opening, the cup, the vessel, the woman. Of course, this is again why I think they want us out of biology, why they want to trick us and manipulate us into thinking that things so obvious as construction of the physical body and the way that mechanisms work, look, function, and were, made for reasons. That right there sort of speaks in a very obvious sense as to what directionality is versus receivership, and how one would come first would be masculine, and secondary is the woman. And of course, the third becomes, the conception of the child, the birth of the new world that is the family unit, all of the co-creative realities, projects, dreams, everything that a man and woman do together to create home, life together, becomes the wonderful signifier of what three is: creation, creativity, newness. Now, what I really wanted to kind of bring up today, I'm not going to go into other numbers or anything today, but what I want to talk about was sort of the Mother Nature, divine feminine energies. And how sometimes it can seem like this or that, and especially in this, world that we're in these days, and there's so much divide, and there's so many tribes and peoples with their beliefs trying to get everybody to confirm them, affirm them, join them, and be against the landscaper has to be right outside my door, of course. My window, I mean. Hopefully he's going to be walking away, turning that off. Oh, anyways, sometimes it gets shown like this or that. Either there's Mother Nature and there's this feminine over God system should be matriarchal, or that there, is this the more patriarchal, obvious version, and that Mother Nature isn't a part of that, and that's some like hippie kind of thing built out of nowhere, or it could be even seen as something, blasphemous or against, I don't know, demonic, or against Christianity, against Catholicism or something. I don't know. Actually, I think the Catholics are a little bit more mystical, so they might be into that. But not to speak for people I don't even know anything about. Actually, let's not. But I just get the impressions, and in my own sort of impressions, I have created sort of separate ideologies of these, and would think that they don't really cross over. But in fact, oh, there we go. The window's a little open. Sorry. But when in fact, if we look at what numbers speak to us about the great creation and how something would be built out of it, like I just said, it makes sense that they could both be there, and that there's a place and space for both types of workings, masculine and feminine, to have an original great logos actually be that masculine energies, yes, and then to understand how the divine feminine has her own logos, which is birthed to run parallel, to run intersecting, to be that point that touches the great logos in it, but to come cast off in their own way as well. And when we think of our earth around us and the organic life, what we see Mother Nature, quote unquote, play out, and how nature in itself reproduces, comes into formation, and works, in productivity, it displays to us the most perfect, abundant service to others, positively aligned system that we could ever learn from. And so this is, what my talk is kind of about, and why it has to do with math, and all this comes together with systems and with math, is really because we can learn the truth of what we're seeing more clearly and with more depth when we align math with spirituality. And when we understand that math in itself is really alive, and it really is just other ways to describe truth, happenings. I think at a later time, and other times I've also kind of given some comparisons about different kind of maths and what I'm talking about. I think I'll try to make a clearer version, but I mean later at another time. But it's pretty obvious, just like we say words on a paper, dead words. Black and white text is not live speech. Equations on the page in a vacuum of mathematics set in a place setting, is not the same as what I'm talking about live math, which is counting, arithmetic, adding things up, finding middle points, knowing and understanding shapes and angles, and the accumulation of matter. All of these things are common sense points that, I think either we used to know completely and then we forgot, or perhaps, we're just coming around to putting two and two together finally, after having learned them in quite separate areas. But regardless of the walk up or whatever before, the here and now is now. And what we can say for now, or as of now, is that all that I've been trying to explain about numbers reflecting real people or ideas and energies, this is living math. Now, they're not just placeholders that mean something either. They come together in combinations and they grow in ways that make complete sense, and that in themselves are almost predictive. They're not always predictive, but they are. There's just like the seasons, and just like night and day. You can't exactly, these days we have clocks to say that we can do this, but say man before time, man before industry, couldn't tell exactly every day at what time that sun was going to hit the horizon, but they know every day the sun's going to go past the horizon. It's going to be night. There's the difference between knowing the minutia of some kind of false constraint mechanism that you've put on like measurement to say the sun's going to set at 6:57 today, and then tomorrow it's going to set at 7:05 because of this and that. The true knowing, the knowledge of that the ancients had, that every day was slightly different, but it does happen, was closer to the true scientific thinking, in my eyes, true gnosis of knowing, than they have these days with their clocks and their predictive things. Now, that's kind of the same metaphor and the same makeup, these two different ways of using and viewing the world, and math and numbers, science and all of that, is what I kind of want to highlight and what I'll be continuing to talk about. And this is how we separate whether we're involving ourselves in dead practices or we're truly living life alive. Many will hear what I'm saying, many will understand the words that I'm speaking in multiple levels, and others will perhaps get one door and only, which is fine. Any interpretation is welcome, but just to understand that it's a channeled gateway and that the path narrows as we go through it. And I don't claim to be at the end. I'm in a middle point myself, but I'm just saying there's a couple of layers to the interpretation of things that I'm already offering. And they're not meant to be taken in just one avenue either. But offshoots are welcome because all exploration helps us to gain more definition in the whole picture. And so to see how nature speaks math honestly, truthfully to us by is really what I kind of want to share more clearly and talk about. And having Mother Nature and having organic nature display the feminine aspect of the Great Mother is perfect as well, because the energies needed to keep this amazing, positive, ever-flowing system going, they have to be running from spring. There has to be an eternity to it. There has to be a gnosis of infinity. And number two, excuse me, the feminine who's birthed from the masculine comes after the singular point and has a direct connect to singularity and understands where it comes from deeply. And in fact, two, in itself, when we look at the number two and we talk about numerology, personality numerology, two is that best man. It's the sidekick. It's that ultimate best friend. It's the Watson to Sherlock Holmes. It's the Robin to Batman, in all of these different ways that two can be shown. Those are, of course, references that are male on male references, both of them. But I mean it also to bring us back to generality and to step us out of these strict offenses where we have to immediately have feminine representation now, equally in the way that we expect it to be. A beautiful blonde or something it has to be Barbie and Ken have to be the reference for number two. They have to be the depiction of this, what I'm going to call number two here. And yeah, they have their role, and that image has its own wonderful sacred representations. But it doesn't always have to be like that. But it's also not, I don't mean it, and it shouldn't be taken in this negative inverted blasphemy as to, oh, that must mean there's an androgyny. That must mean that improper homosexuality is encouraged, or that that divine masculine and feminine aren't actually meant to be the points of procreation that were intended by intelligent design. I don't mean that at all. But in fact, I think that if we could remember that we don't have to adhere to those negativities just because there's a potentiality for an inverted distortion to be interpreted off of something, to be taken and run away with, to be bent in an angle over there if chosen to be. It doesn't mean that clear, good thinkers, honest people have to vibe with that, have to bring that and make it a part, have to go explore that, have to validate that as if it is now the best potentiality. Sorry, it's one of many potentialities. It's not the greatest. And in fact, when we look at overall productivity, growth, best things for wholes, it is not, because it's not eternal. It's not sustainable. The productivity points are very controlled and restricted on what two males coming together can do. But again, this is what artificial copying happens. This is what inorganic happens to do and tries to trick and force to do. And unfortunately, as soon as you give that more weight, or you bring that potentiality into full focus, it becomes viable. Everything, it's a free will discovery. All of infinite intelligence can take things as ever as it wants to. And so, points of discovery in a negative alignment, self-serving systems can find things in that will fuel their system. So we have what happens with artificial copying and false reproduction. 1 + 1 equals 3. And this is, oh, now I'm getting out of, well, this is Mother Nature and the Creator's joke together. This is sort of the divine masculine and feminine's co-creative joke that they make, and that shadow doesn't get, that artificial intelligence will never understand. And that is where divine feminine can take a back seat as number 2. Has no problem admitting it's also a human being, just like man is a human. We're one of the same. That's why, this is another reason why I think, no offense, men, but the female energy needs to come second, because we are more open and humble energies to begin with because of the receivership that it represents, and it puts us in this place, more level-headedness that's not as actionary, that's not as decisive, go, make it happen, do it, strong and strength and large and just one thing. It's just man, Woman comes in, the female, the second, is man, is human, but its faculties are opposite. It's nighttime, it's rest, it's receivership, it's comforts, it's sleep, it's, the sun and the moon, light and dark, eyes open, eyes closed, happenings, imagination, actionary and intuitive senses, because you're using those layers of co-creative in the third dimension, and in external realities and everything outside of us, like the man does. He takes this sort of, his intuition comes from reading happenings, action, and doing, versus the female's intuition comes from reading within, and the integration of closing the eyes and allowing the imagination to then take the happenings from the outside world, reflect them, and then change them up a bit, see the contrast, see the other side of it, birth things out from inside of her, versus the man who makes things of what is already here. He uses what is inside of him, actionary. He sends forth what is inside of him to do good outside, whereas the woman has the outside come to her and does good with it to bring in, make things of her, to offer comfort, create space for people. And again, like I talked about biology before, it's quite obvious the sperm is sent out and the egg is received, and the woman creates it in the womb and births that out. The third comes out, but it's something so separate. It is the same. Here we go with 1 + 1 is 3, and what they can't understand, AI will never get it, because the third human comes out. It's a human just like mom and dad. If it's a boy or a girl, we don't know yet, right? And back in the day, ancient times, we'd have to check between the legs to see 1 or 2. Which one is it? But again, it's human. We're all the same. We're all the singular, what we would call in quantitative counting, human counts number 1 now. Human represents the number 1, right? And so we're all humans. We have this 1, 1, 1 represented, counted up into 3 people, right? But really, when we talk about numbers and symbols, 1 + 1 = 3, we mean the family unit, and we mean one human, and one human came together to make family, to this whole new concept that is a whole new place of discovery, and the child leads the discovery happening in the 3. And it's not the man, it's not the mom or the dad, the initial 1 or the 2 that sort of has scoped out around it. The 3 leads the discovery here. Now, the 3 is the main focal point. You know, the child becomes the focal point of the family and holds the mom and the dad together, and all the newness is really birthed out of that happening, right? And so, just, yeah, it speaks truth, it speaks honesty. The numbers sort of speak for themselves in themselves. And just like, okay, just to bring it, I've kind of got sidetracked away from what I came here to sort of talk about again, which was Phi and Fibonacci and equal sharing or imperfect sharing. But all things are meaningful. But this is how, you know, to say that the woman comes secondary this is all important to that, and it holds space, right? Because for nature to come after the universe, right? For Earth to come after the great universe, the Logos is out there, the sun, the Earth comes secondary. Mother Nature shows through natural happenings, you know, the truths of math, and then humans have created math based on these happenings. And much like this, Fibonacci has discovered, and the sequence, and what the spiral is, and what beauty really means, and why things that, you know, why we acquaint this with beauty, and what it means to be beautiful is really to honor another, like, you know, to see something in the other that's harmonious and well reflected and looks, you know, lovely, like love. Why do we think love in beautiful? You know, these are, you know, I'm mostly just pondering around at this moment, but to say that the math speaks volumes is really, you know, what I'm bringing forth. And this brainstorming session is mostly about to help me as I'm working through this long form visual blog to really bring up a couple of different ways of looking at the spiral and Fibonacci spiral and the sequence, and the difference between these angular bends and distortions of light, which I will refer to as lies, inorganic, incorrect choice points, versus what's created with the spiral, this beautiful gradient, where there aren't these sharp corners, where there isn't this drastic angles of measurement, you know, forced for reasons. And that's very metaphorical, but it's also wonderfully tangible to look at and to pull out and to see the truths being displayed in the math and in the numbers. And to get down to kind of the brass tacks of my models and thinking, I talked a bit already about what I mean about those distortions and the angles and all of that. But what I hope to kind of just talk about today is more of the benevolent side of the positive systems at work, and what the spiral and Fibonacci sequence is all about. Why is it important to us? Of course we say, oh, it creates some beauty. We can put beautiful things upon that, and for some reason they follow the same sequence. We can put a pine cone on it or a sunflower at some reason, beehive cones and all these things. Excuse me, drinking coffee. They all seem to form in this way, and what's up with that, right? The gathering up of what we already have and taking account of it to do new with is what's happening in plain language when we talk about Fibonacci sequence. And to bring it back to Mother Nature running this secondary model, this two happenings in organic nature, right? So all the models of Earth run on this sort of model birthed by Mother Nature, kind of. It's very simple, and it's nothing is done by measure. Nothing is done imperfectly. In fact, things are done imperfectly. And this is why I love to have Mother Nature again, because mothers really will understand this, or anybody with siblings. Family teaches us these things so well. They really do. But mothers understand how sharing isn't always cut and dry. Giving your children what they want in a point of compromise between each other calls into our being and into our emotions, into our mental state, into our spiritual selves, these conflicts where we want both sides to be equally served. They're conflicts for the best, highest good. I love Catherine Austin Fitts. I said this in another one of my talks recently, but I love this quote. Family is the conspiracy to see each other succeed. And it's so true. It's when you have multiple children and both of them want something, they want, the last slice of pizza, you have a decision to make, and say, in my case, like my sons are 7 years apart. So one was, a lot bigger and larger and than the other at times. So sometimes, say, the last slice of pizza, even though they both want it, I wouldn't cut it straight down the middle. They say, if you get these giant slices of pizza sometimes at certain places, it's like a quarter of the whole pizza is a single slice, right? If both my 3-year-old and my 10-year-old want to share that last slice of pizza, and both of them have already had a piece or 2 pieces before, this all comes into account. Okay, how big are they? How many pieces have they had before? Both of them are of different sizes and different food requirements in general, right? This all comes into play into deciding how I'm going to slice this equally. It's not just half. It's not just let me get out right in half and cut this pizza in half. You gauge it and you give the bigger boy a bigger slice a little bit, and the little 3-year-old gets a little sliver of a slice, perhaps, but that's still equal sharing. That is perfect imperfect sharing right there, because the mother knows the prerequisites and what each one has walked up to, its unique nuances and needs, and also its weaknesses and things that could be detrimental to it. And so when it delves out the portions, it takes all these things into account from a place of benevolence and unconditional love for the highest good of both. And of course now, there's all the bad moms and all the negativity can get harped onto it, and we could go play in negativity forever in all the ways that it hasn't been done and couldn't be done. But that does not take away, and we shouldn't allow it to, the fact that it's there, and it does happen, and it is done all the time. And in fact, I have done it myself, so I speak from, from knowing that positive potentials, although they don't look like the easiest to do, they're readily available, just like the negative ones, and we can do them. We can do hard things. I love Adrienne says that a lot, and just like, it's so true. I mean, she means it about push-ups or chaturanga, or standing and holding a balancing position for quite a while. But it's the same thing. Yoga is life. Just like these truths and math and all of these displays of the ways that we explain something are really just talking all about the same thing. And that's why the law of one, the one truth, the whole, you can't, every tradition, everybody comes back to it. And yeah, so equal sharing is not always straight down the middle. And again, this is why the perfect, beautiful spiral and the golden mean, right? The golden ratio, the average that's golden, it's not straight down the middle. It's not 1.5 exact. Every time, get your rulers out, guys, because the beautiful halfway between 1 and 2 is 1.5. We better find it. No, it's actually never ending, or it's a multitude of numbers, depending on who you ask about how to calculate this. But it's 1.618, some other numbers after it, it's that unequal half displayed for us, and says that in love and beauty, this is how you find it. This is where it lies. It's not where we expect it to be. It's not cut and dry. It is not black and white. And if it is, and when we make it that way, we can notice that we're making it that way, cut and dry, because it creates the angular box. It creates the right angle. It creates restriction and a forced change of direction that feels uncomfortable, that looks awkward. There's not a symmetry there. There's an ugliness. There's a mistake. There's a rough edge. Forgive me drinking coffee again. But this is, first and foremost about the beauty and about unconditional love and imperfect sharing and about cyclic giving and the positive ever-flowing spiral energy that's created and ensured always when we go into this imperfect sharing. And a momentum is created. And also, the thing is, it's sort of like rounding up. It is, because we have taken the 1.5 and it's, understand it's not under 1.5, right? It's a little over 1.5. So it's not like 1.49, blah, blah, blah. It's a little over. You give a little more than that perfect right angle, right? And that ensures later abundance. That assures extra. And of course, Mother Nature is the great giver and the great receiver as well. Like the interpreter, that's the word I'm thinking of, the intuitive interpreter kind of, whereas all of the things that she has collected and has or is given and goes through, the organization and the handout of needs to be met, she does from such an organic place of the heart. She gives such as directly from herself. She knows her children are of her, that it's service to her when she serves another. It's so directly, innately, and integrally made into her thought processes, basically, that the extras are always used in the right place. And whoever needs something, she's got extras for them. And if it's something might not fit, she'll make it fit. This is the miracles of it. This is the unexpectedness of it. This is again why it isn't just predictably 1.5. It can't be. It has to be spur of the moment, because you have to take into account, maybe in the same exact example I gave before about my sons sharing this last slice of pizza, perhaps my older son already ate half that pizza himself, and the younger 3-year-old has been playing around and just nibbled on one piece here and there, and he dropped it in the sand outside or whatever. And so my older son says, there's only one slice left, I really want one, I really want a piece of that. But my little 3-year-old, he's actually hasn't really ate any food, and even though he's not really crying for that second half of it, he needs to eat it. And so the portion that I cut is that complete half. Or maybe even I give the older son slightly less because he's already had some and he doesn't even need that. I give him the kind of sliver, and I give the 3-year-old the bigger piece. It's not always, the answer isn't always predictable either. Who gets what side of the bigger portion is not always the same. Nothing is always the same. And Mother knows that. 2 knows that, because 2 supports the 1. The 1 holds the initial idea. And the 2 is always feeding back and feeding off of, bouncing through and reflecting in such intuitive, integral, innate ways through and back through the 1. She's almost not even herself. This is another thing where I think Mother and secondary, the female coming second, is such an epic symbol, because sort of the mother in the house is almost not even herself. She can almost forget herself in all of the care of doing things in children and housework and husband, and even good work in community and helping others. Or if you have elderly parents, even the mother sort of gets to be the role of caring and helping the elderly generation above her as well, So, but again, if it comes from a great service, because she's honoring them as a reflection of herself, she knows she was once the child. She knows she will be the grandmother at one point. She knows her husband honors and creates the supportive place for her, the safety and supportive place for her to do all of the work within. And so just by her doing her work, she's honoring him and his creative power to make this happen in the first place. And she fuels his divine essence and his power, the first form, the first form and standing, just by being her. And again, this is why I think the woman holds the secondary place setting and the beacon of light more beautifully. And again, why the woman is so beautiful and cultivated as this kept thing. And chivalry tells us that beauty's to be saved and honored, and all of these things, they make sense. And not in, it shouldn't be in a way that is so demonized, is so superficial, is so inverted and distorted and run away with, and in all of these really extreme ways. And in fact, balance is the key to all. Happy mediums and harmonious solutions. They're not always pretty and to look at the eye anyway. But when we accept sort of the plainness, when we accept the thing as it is, we actually find beauty in it. They say, oh, there's a face only a mother could love. Right? But it makes sense, and it's true. And when we see the beauty in people, even the most sort of disfigured people, when we see and we love them, we see them as beautiful. Their beauty shines forth, their perfection comes right out. Now I'm going to get into, no, I'm not even going there. I'll leave this for tomorrow for my Bible studies. But uncovering perfection underneath that's always there and always has been there is, again, for those who have ears to hear. Thank you for listening. Thank you for this roundabout explanation. I'm sure I'll be back because I've only scratched the tip of the iceberg here on this, and love to hear everything that people have in response. And yeah, I'm sure we'll be back next time to continue on. Because I haven't even, I'll leave a cliffhanger here for those who care and who are still with me, who listen enough to know that next time I'm coming back in a secondary part to this to talk about the numbers and what the other portion of the spiral Fibonacci sequence reflects. It's not just about beauty and caring and sharing, like I have just mentioned, but it's also about how Mother Nature makes things. What is this? She makes something out of nothing, almost the extras to be had, and what that rounding up to have extras to build with really means, and what the numbers show us. So I'll talk about that next time, and we'll talk about the sequence 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, on and on, and we'll talk about what that building is, and then I'll bring it into sequential building, and we'll talk about numbers, qualitative numbering, and the phases that numbers represent in the building. But to understand how things get built up is so important. So we'll talk about that next time. Thanks for listening to me ramble for almost an hour today. If you happen to be, is this a joke or not, looking for more from me in the meantime, you can always find things on a.Marie.Speaks.com or over on Telegram. If you use that platform, I'm over there sharing memes and daily inspiration points at a.Marie.Speaks.com. You can find the link in the description. Thank you for your time, for your beautiful contribution to our collective. We certainly would not be the same. We could not be the same without you, so I thank you for that. I hope you'll get back to contributing to your direct world and away from screens, just like I'm about to get back to my real world life today. But thank you for spending some time with me, and I'll see you next time.